Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Berman, the host of the Cyber Hero Adventure Show. Thanks so much to you and all of the unsung cyber heroes who toil in anonymity to keep us safe. I want to start off with a quick survey question. Based on that super cool, high energy introduction, how grumpy are you to see me just sort of sitting here? Well, I'm a 63-year-old guy who wears a superhero costume, so stay tuned. It might be something interesting to see. But in the meantime, that's why I have these incredible guests like Terry McGraw. Hey, Terry, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Gary. Thank you. And I love that new lead in. That was really good.
It's funny because I was thinking, I really need to do something that transitions from that high energy fun, and then they just sort of see me sitting here. Anyone in our audience, love to listen and learn from you. But in the meantime, we're so lucky to have Terry McGraw, head of customer success, public sector at Polarity, who's going to share with us some really cool insights about security operations centers and stuff like that. But before we jump into that, Terry, tell us a little bit about your origin story. And I use the word origin story because our audience knows we create superhero comics and Peter Parker, got bit by a spider and then became Spider-Man. So like, what's your motivation? Why do you do what you do?
That's a great question, Gary. I think for me personally, it's about a deep desire to help people. I enlisted in the Army, when I was 19 years old. Along the way, I got commissioned. I spent 27 years doing it. I did lots and lots of roles and missions in the military, but I truly felt the most gratified helping other people who could not help themselves. And when I took those experiences and roles from my roles in the Army, and I spent a long time in Army cyber and counterintelligence, taking that experience into the commercial sector, it's still, I get a deep sense of gratification, self gratification from helping people. And let's not kid ourselves. This is people's livelihoods on the line. And it's not as life and death as it was in my previous roles, but at the end of the day, if someone's business gets wiped out or someone loses their job or their payroll, the consequences can be dire, as you well know. It's happened to you directly, as I know. So it's a terrible, terrible thing, and anything we can do to help that, I take great passion about.
Indeed, and one of the great things about you and everyone like you is I learned this phrase actually from a general. He said, "We serve in silence," and it's true. It's really kind of unbelievable. I mean, we think we're at war, whether it be cyber war or kinetic war, but really maybe 1%, of Americans are involved in that, and of course that includes your families who sacrifice so much, who are also real life unsung heroes. So thank you and everyone like you for your service. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
So how did you get to this moment, where we're going to be, talking about security operations centers? That's, pretty advanced stuff. And tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've always been in operations, and what I mean by operations, meaning the mission portion of getting things done, whether it be in the military or in commercial sector. I spent a lifetime building security operations center. So
Oh,
operations in general, and then specifically around security operations center, and it's I think it's a pretty misunderstood area. Folks tend to think of the security operations as the security portion. But the operations is truly what's important. I mean, security is the underpinning, but understanding either the business outcomes or mission space of the agency you're in charge of protecting, is as or more critical to understand and to be fully immersed in. And I think bringing the components of understanding the mission outcomes and the business outcomes with the proper security architectures, people, processes, and technologies to make that minimize the business risk to doing business in today's environment. That is truly what I have spent 20 years of my adult profession doing and building.
wow, that's super cool and interesting. And speaking of professionals and unsung cyber heroes, Let's introduce Ross Bowerman, Security Product Manager at Software One. How you doing, Ross?
I'm good, Gary. How are you getting on?
Great. Where do you live?
So I'm going to add some geographic diversity to today's show. I'm over in Edinburgh in Scotland.
Ah, okay. And
Although
so
I did live in Georgia for a while.
True.
I've visited Terry in that house. He's not in Georgia, but I have spent some time in the US.
And so tell us a little bit. This is something that I've listened and learned from people all over the world about different perspectives pertaining to security, based on geography. You're smack in the middle of GDPR and all that. And so how in your experience, are things the same where you are versus the States, or different? Are there any sort of macro things you've noticed?
Great, it's a good question. So yes, there are lots. Like Terry said, an architecture is an architecture, whether you're in the UK, US, Australia, it doesn't really matter. You're still probably using a Microsoft machine connecting to something else, Microsofty or Linuxy, and Amazon and Microsoft are probably involved somewhere along the way as well, further along that chain. Compliance is compliance. Every country, every region has their own sort of regime that they want or need to comply with. Something goes wrong, you've got to tell someone about it, notify someone. There's a lot of similarities. I think the bespoke part comes at the sort of tickly part where you need to get close, like Terry said, about knowing those business outcomes, because anyone can stop block an IP or something reasonably straightforward. But the difficult part, and certainly when Terry and I worked together, which we did prior to our positions here, that's always the hard part, was feeling that closeness, and that's difficult to achieve at scale globally.
Yeah, indeed. And we're going to pop up the name of your company here, Software One. Sort of cool graphic interface, the way that looks. And so tell us about Software One. What is your relationship with Terry? How do you guys work together?
Sure. So we both worked for SecureWorks, which is part of Dell Technologies. Terry's obviously got his sort of backstory. I came a little different path, but not. There were some similarities. I was a police officer for 15 years
Wow.
in Scotland. Yeah, I did sort of intel and cybercrime and sort of various sort of covert world for a while, which was great fun. But after 15 years, I wanted to see if I could do something else, and got recruited in to run the Security Operations Centre in Edinburgh with SecureWorks. And then after 5.5 years, left and joined Software One. I wanted to move into product management, which is where I am right now. And along with some colleagues, I'm responsible for the cybersecurity portfolio of Software One. We're in 88 different countries, turn over $11 billion. It's a big old business that we're in.
Wow. I didn't know you were that big. That's super cool. And by the way, to our audience, I really want to thank Terry and Ross for sponsoring today's episode. We really appreciate sponsors, especially my wife. Yay! So, little did you know, you're actually helping my marriage. So we appreciate that. So let's delve into the subject matter. My audience knows I've learned through my sort of Forrest Gump journey into cybersecurity that I know a little bit about many things, but I don't really know anything in depth. And wait, we have some breaking news here. Enterprises operating in today's fast-moving digital world need a cybersecurity strategy capable of tracking increasingly sophisticated threats. What luck that we have you guys to talk about that.
Luck indeed.
It is.
So let's kind of unpack, this notion of security operations center. Terry, you already alluded to the fact that most people, focus on the security part. But, one of the interesting aspects of this is, how do you hire the right people? You find them, train them, and, make them world-class professionals. So I'll leave that up to you all to enlighten our audience.
Yeah, the people portion of a business is always one of the most expensive portions of your cost of goods sold. It's a big portion of your P&L, and so you want to hire the right people and keep them as long as possible. I think in the security world, unfortunately, there's a few things that work against the security professional. First, your internal HR or even an external HR, like a hiring agency that'll help you, rarely has the technical acumen to effectively discern whether or not the person they're talking to is actually qualified to do the job. So, even if you give them a list of things, they balance a resume versus what the person says they're good at. They have no ability to validate that. And so,
well, wait, let me excuse the interruption, because coincidentally yesterday I did a show about accreditation and certifications. How does that fit in with what you're saying?
So there's the organizational certs and creds, and then there's individual certs and creds. I'm a big believer in practical application of skills. So if you ask me to review someone who has a bachelor's degree in cybersecurity studies versus someone who has a bunch of SANS, gold standard certs or OSCP, those kind of things, I tend to look with more favor because there's a practical application portion that they had to do to
Right.
get certs. But I think it's important. The first step you got to do is what I need to hire. And this is a step that's often not really thought through well enough. Like a proctologist and a neurologist are both doctors, but you don't want them doing a high five in surgery. And it's true.
I like to know which one is more of a pain in the ass. That's
it could be either one if they do a high five.
I have to do a reality check. If there's anyone from the FCC listening to the show, I'm sorry, I don't know what the rules are about profanity, but I'll try not to do it again.
Whatever you can get away with, that's the rule. So I think in light of that, folks have to determine what skills they really need to do what thing. Unicorns don't exist. People try to hire someone who can do everything. That's just ridiculous. It gets very specialized very quickly. As you come into the field, you kind of get tracked into what you need. And I think the leadership and management of those functions really need to understand what they need done and what tier of skill level they need as well to do that. And do I hire for everything? Do I outsource some of it? Do I apply it in, what tier do I want to, maintain? Because that's where you get the expense. And you really have to make that determination. I don't think enough people spend enough time determining like what are the real skills and at what level do I need them and how much time am I going to invest in that process? Ross, do you agree or disagree?
No, absolutely. But underpinning all of that is this sort of personal desire, right? So someone can coast through a college course and get a certificate at the end of it that says they can do it. And like Terry says, there's no assessment of anything practical there. I look for people with home labs, right? With virtual machines who are throwing attacks at things to try and see what happens. My best hire in previous life used to be a taxi driver. Guy got so bored of driving taxis, he paid himself through a college course. He set up a home lab. He was just the most driven person you could imagine. He was.
Oh, wait! Did you say driven in the context of being funny? So are you gonna? Okay, I'm getting to know you here. Did you do that on purpose, or was that just good luck?
I'm afraid I didn't, guys. Complete luck, I promise you.
Good for you. You showed some integrity. I appreciate that.
But personal drive is the absolute key behind it all. Because being in a security operations center, you're working 24/7, right? It's nonstop. The bad guys don't stop. The ops center doesn't stop either. It's one of those things. And yeah, you can automate some things and lock some things out, but you still need people behind it.
Yep.
Well, also, this is not something I was going to necessarily share, but you were talking about accreditations and certifications. I recently received at 63 years of age my first cert. Here's a little depiction of that.
DevOps Gary Berman. Did you pass?
I passed. Thank you so much for all your support. Okay, so here's the question to you guys. On this particular test, the range, the passing was 65 and perfect score was 100. What do you think my score was on a DevOps certification?
Oh, 95 or better, Gary.
Yeah,
Rob?
let's go with that. Let's go with that.
65. I mean, I was literally right on the razor's edge, you know, and so rather than just sort of letting that go, these guys were really nice. I said, can I just see what I need to still work on? What did I get wrong? And then all the human stuff within DevOps, like, you know, agile and all that stuff, I literally got 100. I had every question right. And on the technical stuff, I got a 30, which is exactly accurate. So I can testify that certs are accurate for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I think
So,
the
yeah.
application of it is very important. And then, you know, we implemented, Ross and I and a few others implemented a tech screening process to help the HR folks where we kind of had a 3-phased evaluation process. The first was you give a sort of a multi-choice screening, and it's only to weed out the people who absolutely lied on their resume, right? It won't help you much beyond that.
And it did.
And it did. It does weed out it helps at least reduce the amount of people that you're going to have to go vet. Because, you know, there's a lot of desperate people right now, and for you know, COVID didn't help anyone. And so people are trying to fake it till they make it. And so, but unfortunately, because this is a very serious business, we have to be a little bit more stringent. And it doesn't matter if they came from a taxi cab or a restaurant, they're reinventing themselves. Do they have the skills to protect your business or agency? So we did a tech screen that way. And then if they passed that, that's when they got their first sort of more practical evaluation. You know, we asked them, like, if we threw them a packet capture or we gave them some endpoint analysis, could they at least reason their way through it and answer the basic questions that we were looking for? And then we would ask them some personality type driven questions. And so the whole point was to find someone with at least a base amount of skill, but with the passion and desire to learn more. Some of our worst hires were people who were really, really, really skilled, but thought they knew everything.
Mm-hmm.
That actually makes the worst security operations personnel because they think they're infallible. They know too much. They're either A, bored in the role, B, you can't train them to do, you know, new things, or they think they already know things. And so as a consequence, it can be really a kind of a corrosive behavior. So hiring the right skill set, the right personality for the right role is critical in the security operations center.
Yeah, and Ross, maybe you can add some thoughts about this question. You know, Terry mentioned earlier about outsourcing or insourcing. You know, what's your perspective on that?
I saw both. I would work with clients who had decided to outsource and so came to us, and that continues in my current role. And I also worked with clients who were leaving us to try and do it themselves. And honestly, it was quite cyclical. They would go away and try, maybe take a year or 2, 3. It didn't work out for them, so they'd come back. Then they'd get sick of the service from someone, and then they'd go and try it themselves. And then the CISO would change, and he or she would try and do something different. So it was always moving, ever moving. And the technology changes. You've got some SIEM products now. I would argue are almost legacy in today's sort of world. And Terry knows more about the sort of the application of all the modern stuff than I do. But like I say, a lot of SIEMs are arguably legacy. So where does that leave you? That leaves you with security analytic platforms. There's maybe a dozen or so of those sort of providers in the world right now, worth their salt, arguably. I better not say too much. But
wow, wait, let's unpack that for a moment. You know, because one of the things that I learned at my very first conference, I've been to 53 cybersecurity conferences in 3.5 years.
Wow.
As part of my Forrest Gump journey to listen and learn from the smartest people in the world. And I eventually became a reporter for a magazine, and that sort of flipped the whole food chain where everyone now wanted to talk to me because, you know, I would write stories about whatever they're doing and that kind of stuff. And I remember going to my first DEF CON and Black Hat conventions in Vegas about 4 years ago. I walked into the exhibit area of Black Hat and my head just exploded with all of the vendors, you know, and all of the lights, sounds, and
Yep.
buzzwords, and it was just my background is all in marketing, so to me it was like sensory overload. How is it that there are 12 or whatever the number is, out of I don't know how many vendors there are. I mean, I've heard numbers from 2,500 to 4,000.
Easy.
Yeah.
Help our audience unpack that a little bit.
Well, so those, and I think there's about, last time I looked, there's about 5,000 MSSPs globally.
5,000.
But they're all using someone else's back end, or they are the provider themselves. And honestly, most of the providers probably don't want to provide services on it. That's why all these MSSPs exist. So that's probably the back end of it all. But what I'm finding nowadays is that only a subset, and arguably the larger enterprise clients, really want or need that massive SIEM like data lake kind of thing, where they need to sort of run forensics. They might have their own incident response team, their own forensics team, so they need these tools. A lot of others are looking for more of a, dare I say, sort of quick and dirty response to speed being the essence into it, which isn't something that the legacy platforms provide. So insource or outsource is a tricky one. If you want to insource it, you've got to be able to make that decision. Do you want that big sort of Goliath of a SIEM product, or do you want something that enables you to sort of triage these alerts? And then if you outsource, well, you've arguably got the same decision to make, but someone else is going to be doing it for you.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead, Terry.
No, I was the SIM platforms, and even some of the EDR solutions tend to be noise generators, and it's noise can be just as frustrating, time consuming, and probably even more so than anything. Generating false positives still requires someone to triage it. And if you're generating hundreds or thousands of false positives, by culling a whole bunch of data, you're not doing yourself any favors, because you're burying yourself as the forest in the trees. I think that at the end of the day, what you're looking for is a tool with a very low signal to ratio to weed out that which your team has to go look for, because you're never going to be able to hire those enough people to do that.
Yeah, and to build on that point, this is something, Terry, that you shared with us, just kind of know thyself, visibility into what you have. I mean, I had heard, and maybe you guys can validate this or not, that for large enterprises, maybe they have like 75 or more solutions, in their security stack, and maybe most people don't know exactly what they have or how things operate. And then when you have a CISO whose tenure is, let's say, maybe 18 months, priorities change, new solutions come in. Can you help us understand that a little bit?
Yeah, from my perspective, it's job one for the leadership of a company. That's just not the CISO or the CIO. We're talking about a fundamental aspect of doing business today, and it's a business risk. So all of the leadership, they don't have to be technical, but they have to understand what the risks are to their business, and then what is being employed to mitigate them. And that includes a deep understanding of your architecture. What is on your network? How is it configured? How is it communicating? What are the pathways? And then the part that people tend to gloss over is your connectivity to your business partners. What risks are you inheriting from their infrastructure, and what are you doing to mitigate those roles? I mean, I'm a big believer of zero trust architectures. The more micro you can get your permission user object schemas, the tighter you'll be. But Gary, unfortunately, at the end of the day, even the most sophisticated attacks, i.e., the SolarWinds, a Sunburst attack, I bet you a year from now, when you look at the initial vector of entry that started the whole thing, there was a whole lot of advanced tradecraft after that initial entry, but a dollar to a donut, it's always a spear phishing. It's always something that was a very, very low security priority that ended up getting exploited.
Well, I mean, just to build on that, we recently signed a joint venture with a great Israeli cybersecurity company called Knowledge, and they're taking our characters and bringing them into 3D, which will be used with disposable glasses, so that It's all interactive. And here, this is almost a world premiere. This is Phoebe the Fisher. This is just a prototype. We're working on shadows and things like that. When she's done, she'll have a harpoon in her quiver for whale fishing. She'll have a spear, for spear fishing. She'll have a fishing rod for spraying prey. So say hi to Phoebe.
I'm Phoebe Fisher. The Fisher hunts its prey by pretending to be legitimate communication from a trusted company or from the hijacked identity of a friend, colleague, or family member. Using one of many ruses, the Fisher encourages the potential victim to divulge sensitive information such as login IDs, passwords, PINs, social security numbers, etc. This information is quickly used to steal money from accounts and to apply for fraudulent loans and credit cards.
So that's Phoebe.
I think I met her in a nightclub once.
Okay, Ross, hold it. Listen, I do humor, you do substance and cybersecurity. That way we stay in our lanes.
Got you, Gary, got you.
All right. So speaking of lanes, though, one of the important aspects of this is, telemetry and the tools, and do, folks have the right tools and the ability to, consider all this stuff and make good decisions. And what do you guys think about this?
Go ahead, Ross. I'll follow up to your comments.
Okay. Well, firstly, telemetry is absolutely vital. So we're past logging now, in my opinion, from a cybersecurity perspective. Although you need logs for certain things, telemetry is the new keyword as far as I'm concerned. So you've got to send that somewhere. You've got to analyze it correctly all the time. You've got to be right every time, or as many times as you can be, and then you've got to do something about it. That's the service that we're building within Software One. I'm sure Terry will sort of talk about the tooling side of it as we go. But you can't do security without certain tools. Now, those 75 that you referenced in a industry before, yeah, they're all doing 75 different things, or maybe 50 things, and there's some replication there. They're all trying to. Everyone's got something to sell, right? There's a lot of vendors trying to do some cool things. Some are trying to be bought, some are trying to be rolled up into other things, but there's a lot of good, really, really good tools out there. The difficulty is choosing the right ones and getting them to work properly. And right back to the first question, getting people to run them, because you can automate everything, but if it goes wrong, Terry and I used to joke, we had a button on our previous platform called the UF button, and it was the undo function. It wasn't anything else. But you've got to be able to roll those changes back if you do something wrong, and that's especially important as a managed service provider. If you outsource that to me and I make a mistake, well, then that's on me. I've got to do something about that. So
yeah, and also, I mean, MSPs are under attack because they're just a great efficient attack vector for criminals, right?
Yep.
Exactly. The supply chain problem, but for security providers, you're absolutely right. So.
Yeah. So now we're kind of entering the sponsored portion of our show, as it were, from Polarity. Thanks so much again for believing in our mission. And we're going to take a look at a demo here, Terry, and maybe you can talk our audience through what it is that they're looking at and what is the mission of Polarity. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we'll tee it up where it's running. So Polarity is really designed to help the analyst, the person who has to deal with all of these disparate tools. Those tools don't natively work well together. They have to be architected, integrated. And if one changes, that architecture and, updating and scripting all has to happen again. And it's all done very, very labor intensive on the back end. What Polarity does and uses optical character recognition on your screen. So it takes what the analyst is looking at and then does smart data lookups against the data sources, so that the person that's working the research or the analysis doesn't actually have to stop what they're doing to go look for data or look at disparate systems or pull up different tabs or external data sources. Polarity brings all that to the analyst while they're in their main workflow. And you don't have to worry about data architecture and integration. You don't have to worry about normalization. Polarity does all that by just bringing you the data in an overlay window to your screen. So it makes your people incredibly efficient. It makes them incredibly thorough because they're not having to hunt for data. The data comes to them. and it makes them way, way, way more efficient. And it also brings some structure because you can say, if I want these 7 data sources considered before I make a decision, here are those 7 data sources, and it's always there in the Polarity overlay window. It's really designed to solve the problem of search and data awareness, and it bridges the gap from all your tools. Doesn't matter where the tools are, because it's not worried about what's on the back end. It's just looking at what the analyst is looking on the text on the screen. It does a screen scrape. It translates what that is. It pulls the data back, and it does it in real time. Millisecond response times for full data awareness. It's a really cool, powerful tool. I actually sought them out when I saw their demo, and I actually kept bugging the CEO till he hired me as a consultant, and then eventually brought me on to his company. I believe that strongly in the product as a way of helping your security operations be way more effective and efficient.
And also, I mean, just to an outsider like me, the difference in terms of the time that it takes in the demonstration that you just had would look to be maybe 50%, time savings, something like that. Yep. How does that translate into economic value or efficiency, within a SOC?
Yeah, it's funny on where you sit in the P&L. People who are worried about their job going away because it's been automated out. Polarity doesn't do that. Polarity makes your people more effective and efficient. We have very large enterprise customers that tell us that on average they see a 33% increase in efficiency across their people. That means they're not having to hire another person. It means the people they do have can be way more effective and way more efficient. And oh, by the way, Polarity is a collaborative tool. Whatever I'm working on, my coworker has complete visibility of. So all of that telemetry is shared. It's a really good way to increase, like I said, the efficiency and effectiveness of your security operations centers. But it can be used for any large data set in anything from biopharm to manufacturing. Whatever you have large data sets of and disparate tools, Polarity can help bridge the gap between all of that, OT and ICS and TCP/IP. It's a pretty powerful capability. Sorry.
And is it must be quite dependent on artificial intelligence?
There is some in the way that we do the screen recognition. So what Polarity does is it pulls from the video graphics and the CPU. It translates at the pixel level. It does predictive analysis of what it's seeing. So is this a string of numbers or is it an IP? Is this a hash or is this a string of letters? Is this if I told it to remember something, can I find that on the screen? And it does all that in near real time. And so we do use some machine learning in the back that does predictive analysis, as well as a host of complex regular expressions to be able to parse out what you're looking at. The cool thing about it is the speed. All of what I said could be done by a lot of different things, but this tool does this in milliseconds. It's not like I do a query and it takes 3 minutes to return a result back to me. This will do it in instantly as you're moving through your workflows.
Ross, what are your thoughts about this?
It used to pain me, Gary. I'd walk around the SOC and you would see analysts with 20 different tabs open, sitting in VirusTotal, Googling things, just spending ages doing all of these functions that they're probably necessary to actually making a correct defendable decision on what they're going to do. But the beauty of it for us was that efficiency part. We operate SOCs in different locations, geographic locations, time zones. So having the ability to collaborate in a tool that was really important to us to sort of take it on board as well. So yeah, it solved a lot of problems.
And so the real world use case, as we saw the demo, which showed about, let's say, a 50% reduction in time. I'm just eyeballing that. But what have you seen in terms of real world results pertaining to the effectiveness of Polarity?
I'm sorry. Is that Ross? Go ahead. I mean,
well, no, I was just going to say it aligns with Terry's. That efficiency gain is very much it. Absolutely. But sorry, go on, Terry.
No, I mean, I think the efficiency is important, but the thoroughness. So I don't know many people. In fact, I don't know any personally that can memorize hashes. Much less, like even an IP address. We call it IP deja vu. Like I've seen that in a log somewhere. I've seen that ticket before. but where? And then you spend a lot of time trying to research, even if it's just Googling your own ticket, or searching your own ticket engine, looking for a reference to that. That's all time consuming. And do I even know where to go look? Like, what tool externally or internally holds the key to that kingdom for putting that piece of puzzle together? So this ensures that you have data awareness and full recall without having to be reliant on the human memory, which is not nearly as good. So you have instant recall all the time, consistent across all your tools. And the cool thing about Polarity is we know your architecture will change. You are going to either have a depreciation schedule, you're going to have a new CISO that brings in new tools, and whatever you had plugged into your SIM now has to all be ripped and replaced. It all has to be rescripted, all that. Polarity doesn't need any of that. Polarity is agnostic to all of those tools and will provide the information to the analyst in an overlay. So you don't have to do all of that back-end architecture work every time you make a change. It's one of the most powerful and compelling arguments to why it makes sense financially as far as the maintenance cycle goes. Every one of the orchestration tools and SIMs require engineering to bring all that stuff in and out. In our system, you can 4 lines of code and you're done.
Is it really that light? 4 lines of code?
Every integration is about 4 to 6 lines of Linux, and it's up and running.
Oh, that's just nuts. And we're going to pop up on the screen how people can get more information about the demo and about some of the other cool stuff that you're doing. So go to polarity.io/cyberhero to get more information about the cool stuff that Terry and Ross are talking about. So as we're wrapping up here, Ross, I'll just begin with you. What would you like to say to amplify the message or to provide insights, that will be helpful to our audience? And how do they get in touch with you?
Well, if just Google Software One, we'll come up. We're in lots of different countries, and I'm personally happy to chat. Hit me up on LinkedIn or anything like that to get in touch. We can have that discussion. Our thing is the biological response. My CISO loved the terminology. So we were looking at a number of SOAR platforms. They're expensive, they're hard, they work well if they're stood up properly. But we love the biological response, so much so that it actually has a term in Software One now, SOBR, the Security Orchestration Biological Response. And
wait, forgive my ignorance. Can you update me? What is the biological response?
Having a human press the button. So when they're presented with all that information, they don't have to search a million places. They decide what to do with it. We're not relying on an orchestration automation engine to do it. It's a person doing it. But because of the fact that everything's there in front of them, they can make that decision much quicker, much easier. So yeah, SOBR.
Well, I mean, from just a human being standpoint, maybe you can call them something other than a biological response, or I've heard the term a node or an endpoint. I mean, come on.
I like
this is one with the heart.
I love that term. So.
Well, actually, okay, this is really funny because we talked about humor. A friend of the show, hi Evgeny, how you doing? He's with Herchevac. He's a great guy. Writes, who wants to stay in their lanes pertaining to a sense of humor? So I guess no one, and that's okay. Here's another one for Joseph. Hey Joseph, sober, love it. Okay, so people like referring to humans as biological responders. Okay, we'll go with that.
I think it's an important point.
Hey, look, I do superhero comics, so fine. I'm not going to judge anyone.
If we're going to all wait for the Terminator to come back and find Sarah Connor, that's a whole different story. But at the end of the day, this is human endeavor. Technology can help, but humans are still the cause and the response. And so at the end of the day, making sure that you are making the right decision and have the right outcomes in mind is still a human endeavor. I will say the last point that I'd like to leave folks with when it comes to security operations centers, in the digital transformation, don't forget the analog. I cannot tell you how many organizations have been doomed because when they got hit with ransomware, their architectural information, their service information, their mission information was locked up on the very systems that was designed to provide the services. always keep an analog backup. Print stuff out. Keep your binders in a safe. I'm telling you, it will save you so much agony when you have the worst day of your life. To have those hard copies somewhere in a secure location that you can refer to, because I tell you, when your infrastructure is locked up, it becomes human recall of like, hey, who was the vendor for that? What server was that on? What was that configuration? Hey, what's on what VLAN? You don't have time to. That discovery learning will take you months to unscrew your environment. Do yourself a favor. Once a month or once a quarter, print your stuff out, update it, keep it a 3-ring binder, and you've got it. Don't forget the analog in the digital world.
That's incredibly great advice, and this has come up in other conversations I've had with thought leaders about that, and even just how you communicate. Maybe your phone system's going to be out, if you have VoIP and things like that. So our audience, our audience is very sophisticated, so they know all about tabletop exercises and things like that. But now cybercrime is everywhere, and you have to assume that you're breached. I like what you said earlier, Terry, about zero trust. I had the privilege just, I think, about a week or two ago of interviewing John Kendervag, one of the early proponents or fathers of zero trust. And for me personally, it's been an incredibly interesting experience trying to earn some level of trust that brings me the opportunity to listen and learn from guys like you in an industry that's called zero trust. And you can't get much less trustworthy than zero unless you get into negative numbers, I guess.
Well, we want the technology to be zero trust. We want the people to be able to. I think that's another thing that's lost here, is that humans still got to collaborate. That's why polarity is a powerful tool as well. It gives that instant human collaboration in the fight. Look, the bad guys coordinate. The bad guys buy and sell. I mean, it's a retail commodity business on the dark web. But the good guys are still stuck in their lanes. Financial. I don't want to share information because I have a financial, or fiduciary responsibility to my shareholders, and I don't want my stock prices to drop. And the odds are stacked so far against the defender in favor of the criminal. And anything we can do to break that paradigm where we're all fighting the good fight together, that's the kind of trust we need.
Well, just to build on that, I've been really just incredibly honored and impressed with the ISACs. And I've had the opportunity to have a number of the leaders of the various ISACs on our show. I was the master of ceremonies at a recent health ISAC conference, and those are great people who they also have regular jobs, many of them, but they also are these real life unsung cyber heroes, and we really appreciate them as a way to accomplish what you're saying. And so much so, we've actually, I'm going to have them pop something up here. We actually are partnering with the IT ISAC. We're hosting a series. We're starting a series of monthly think tanks, micro think tanks that focus on the nexus of cybersecurity and artificial intelligence in conjunction with 16 critical infrastructure sectors from CISA. So the first one we're doing is on June 3rd. We'll be sending out some information about that. It's kind of first come, first serve, a membership kind of thing, because everyone's, super high level, all that. And the idea being a rising tide lifts all ships.
Yep.
And we're going to produce actual content, and we'll have, some white papers, but we'll also have these super cool videos to debrief the substance of these individual 3-hour sessions. So if anyone in our audience wants to learn more about that, feel free to send an email to Gary@cyberheroescomics.com, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. By the way, Terry, someone asked me recently about who our audience is, for this show, and my first answer was, I don't know. But I had kind of a data scientist go through my LinkedIn connections, and this is what we found. It's very high level people. It's actually, this number is actually gone up to 23,000 connections now, on LinkedIn, and one person's just more competent than the next. It's really unbelievable how many great people there are, in this community. So I'm really grateful to everyone. And Stephen, thanks for giving us a little thumbs up. We appreciate that. Also, send me a note if you're doing anything cool or cutting edge, like what Polarity's doing. I mean, I think this is unbelievably interesting, and has an important place in the conversation pertaining to SOX and other sorts of use cases. So any final words from either of you guys?
Ooh, put me on the spot. No, just stay safe, everyone. Get your vaccine, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, good advice. Terry?
Well, thank you, Gary, for what you're doing.
You're welcome.
I've been blessed to be on your show a couple times now, and
Thank you.
I really do enjoy the venue, and I wish you nothing but the best. You've been having some great guests, and I think that these kind of venues in the dark days of COVID are really way more productive than the slide deck beat downs that everyone else is putting on. So my last words are thank you, Gary, for giving people a venue that's a little bit more fun and a little bit more interactive.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gary.
You're so welcome. So on behalf of the Digital Universe, thanks to Terry and Ross for joining us today. And I'll echo what Ross is saying, get your vaccine. It's time to move on. We're going to go from grief to growth. That's a fact. So everyone have a great day.